I watched in horror as HOA bulldozers invaded my private island to install 172 solar panels without my consent. What would you do when a power-hungry HOA president and her cronies turn your paradise into an industrial nightmare? I jumped out of bed as the rumbling sound shook my windows. Outside, yellow bulldozers plowed through my garden, tearing up the flower beds I had lovingly tended to. Despair quickly morphed into rage as I stormed to the window, my heart racing in disbelief. "Stop! What are you doing on my property?" I shouted, flinging the door open and stepping out onto the porch, the early morning chill biting into my skin. The workers, clad in faded uniforms, seemed not to hear me, their machines roaring as they demolished my sanctuary. Panic rising like bile, I grabbed my cell phone, my hands shaking as I dialed the police. "Yes, sir, we have already received a report from the Pinehurst Point HOA," the officer said, his voice steady and impassive. "They have all the required permits." My heart sank. I had bought this island just 6 months ago, seeking solitude and tranquility away from the chaos of the mainland. The paperwork I signed had promised me the peace I craved. "But this is my private land," I protested. Dressing hastily in jeans and a t-shirt, I stormed out, determination fueling my anger. The last vestiges of my peaceful morning were evaporating as I approached the chaos. There, at the helm of it all, stood Judith Palmer, the notorious president of the HOA, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her nose. "What's happening here?" I demanded, my voice steady, but my heart raced furiously. Mr. Reynolds," she said with a smirk barely concealed beneath faux sympathy. "We're installing 172 solar panels on the eastern shore of your property. It's for the community's benefit." "Benefit? You can't just make that decision without my consent." I interrupted, fury bubbling inside me. "Actually, we can." Judith's smile grew more smug. "Section 8, paragraph 12 of the covenant you signed permits us access for community enhancements. You must have overlooked it." I felt my stomach drop. The mountain of paperwork I had signed at closing flooded back to me, a blur of legal jargon and assurances from my lawyer that everything was standard. "I want to see that covenant." "Of course, Mr. Reynolds. You can stop by the HOA office anytime, once the work is complete," she replied, dismissively turning her gaze back to the chaos. "A complete?" My hands curled into fists as I fought back the wave of desperation. I turned just in time to see a bulldozer crash into my gazebo, the place where I had envisioned enjoying quiet mornings with a steaming cup of coffee. Frantically, I dialed Simon, my real estate attorney. "Are they demolishing my property? You need to help me." "Don't sign anything, and I'll look into this," he warned. "Oh, but it sounds like they have some serious tricks up their sleeves." I hung up, feeling as if the ground beneath me had crumbled. A familiar boat approached across the lake, a small rowboat with my neighbor Max Carter at the helm. He'd lived across the way for years and had always been vigilant about community happenings. Max! Come quick!" I called out as he docked and stepped onto my property, eyes wide with concern. "Are they tearing everything apart? What can we do?" "I've got your back, man. Judith is power-hungry, and she doesn't care about the rules." He gestured toward the chaos. "I overheard some plans last summer. They've been targeting you." Targeting me? Why?" I sputtered, incredulous. "They want your island for their solar project, maximum sunlight exposure. Judith tried to buy it last year. She's overstepping, and we need to stop her." Determination welled up inside me. My sanctuary, my hard-won solitude, how dare they invade it? I clenched my fists, staring at the bulldozers tearing up the land I loved so much. As the day turned to night and the sounds of destruction faded into the darkness, I stood among the wreckage of my dreams, resolute. This wasn't just a fight for my home, it was a battle against an unyielding force that sought to strip me of my peace. It was time to take action, to rally the community and fight back against the HOA with everything I had. I stood among the wreckage of my dreams, the chaos of the day echoing in my head. Judith Palmer and her team didn't just invade my property, they were dismantling everything I held dear, piece by piece. I glanced at Max Carter, whose expression mirrored the anger boiling inside me. What do we do now? I asked, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing down on my chest. We gather everyone, Max replied, determination hardening his voice. They need to see what's happening and understand the stakes. If Judith thinks she can walk all over you, she'll keep doing it. I hesitated, uncertainty creeping in. Oh, but who would stand with me? Everyone's afraid of her, her influence runs deep. Sometimes, when you shine a light on the darkness, others find their courage, Max said, his eyes alight with conviction. Let's start by talking to those who've been pushed around. I know a few neighbors who aren't happy about what's been happening. With his words igniting a flickering flame of hope, I felt a rush of adrenaline. You're right. We can't let her bully us any longer. Determined but anxious, I nodded and pulled out my phone to text Simon, my lawyer. It was time to gather evidence, and I would need to rally the community's support. I texted him, evidence is essential. I'll need your expertise. As I finished typing, another message came in. It was from Maximum. Meet me at the old boathouse at sunset. I have a plan. I arrived at the boathouse, heart pounding in anticipation. The weathered wood creaked under my feet as I stepped inside, the scent of lake water mingling with the faint smell of pine. Max was already there, speaking quietly with a few neighbors who looked equally determined. Everyone knows about Judith's tactics, but no one has the guts to speak up, Max said, gesturing to the group. That changes tonight. What do we do? I asked, scanning their anxious faces. Max leaned in closer. We'll compile evidence. Film the destruction, take photos, document everything. Then we take that to the next HOA meeting. If we can show that she's overstepped her bounds, it may rally more support. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows across the lake, I felt a surge of confidence. We were a small group, but together we could push back against the tyranny of the HOA. What if Judith catches wind of what we're doing? A woman named Lisa, who lived 2 houses down, asked, her voice trembling slightly. Let her, I replied, feeling a newfound boldness. This is about our homes, our lives. We won't be intimidated anymore. The group nodded in agreement, a newfound sense of purpose forming among us. We began sharing stories of Judith's threats, the fines she'd imposed, and the strange circumstances of the recent amendments that had made her power possible. Suddenly, I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was Simon again. I think I've found something interesting, he texted. Meet me tomorrow at the cafe in town. It's urgent. The next morning came too quickly. I grabbed a quick breakfast before heading to the cafe, anxiety swirling. As I stepped inside, the smell of coffee grounded me, and I spotted Simon seated at a corner table, his expression serious. What's going on? I asked, taking a seat. I've been digging into the HOA records, he began. There are some irregularities in the amendments. The recent changes regarding property access rights? They might be illegal. Illegal? How? I leaned in closer, intrigued. Judith and her group amended the bylaws without proper homeowner approval. There should have been a vote to pass those changes, and I couldn't find any evidence that it happened, he explained, his voice low but intense. It's all paper trails and loopholes, but it's there, and it could be our way of fighting back. I felt a rush of exhilaration. So, if we can prove her amendments are invalid, we can challenge everything she's done. Exactly, Simon nodded. This is more than just about the solar panels now. It's about holding her accountable for how she's exploited her position. With that revelation, a plan began to take form in my mind. If we could expose Judith's manipulation, rally the community, and present our evidence, we could reclaim not just my island, but our collective power. Tomorrow, meet me at the community center, I decided firmly. It's time to confront her publicly. We show everyone the truth about the HOA. What if she tries to shut us down? Simon asked, concern etched on his face. She won't see it coming, I replied. The last embers of doubt faded as determination engulfed me. We have the truth on our side, and it's time we made our voices heard. As I left the cafe, adrenaline surged through my veins. I was done being a victim. I was ready to fight for my home, my peace, and to bring down the empire Judith had built on deception. The sun set on that day with a sense of urgency. The pieces were falling into place, and soon, Judith Palmer would face the consequences of her power play, because this wasn't just about me, it was about all of us standing up for what was right. As I left the cafe, adrenaline surged through my veins. I was done being a victim. I was ready to fight for my home, my peace, and to bring down the empire Judith had built on deception. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that mirrored my resolve. Tomorrow would mark the turning point of our struggle, but the weight of uncertainty loomed over me like a storm cloud. That evening, I gathered with Max and the other neighbors at the boathouse again. The air was thick with anticipation as we brainstormed strategies for the upcoming confrontation at the community center. We need to be organized, Max said, pacing the floor. If we're going to crash that meeting, let's do it with confidence and proof. He glanced around the room, his gaze landing on each of us. Document everything, the bulldozer destruction, the missing votes, the testimonies of anyone who's been bullied. I'll bring my camera, Lisa chimed in, her determination clear. We can capture every moment. If we present a united front, Judith won't know what hit her. That idea echoed in my mind as we finalized our plan. My heart raced with the prospect of reclaiming my land and standing against Judith's tyranny. When we dispersed, I felt a sense of camaraderie that hadn't existed before. We were no longer isolated. Together, we were a force to be reckoned with. The next day dawned crisp and clear, an encouraging sign. As I approached the community center, my nerves fluttered in my stomach, but I steeled myself. This was not just about me, this was about everyone who had felt Judith's oppressive grip. Inside, the room was buzzing with chatter as residents filed in, many of them casting glances in my direction. I spotted Judith at the front, her confident demeanor radiating authority. But today, she would face the truth, and the community wouldn't be so easily swayed by her charm. Ready? Max asked, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Ready, I replied, feeling the weight of the moment settle around us. As the meeting began, Judith launched into her usual spiel about community improvements and the benefits of solar energy. But this time, I wouldn't let her mislead the gathering. I waited patiently until she wrapped up, then stood up, the room falling silent. Excuse me, everyone, I said, my voice steady despite the tension in the air. I need to bring a few things to your attention. Judith's face twisted with irritation. Mr. Reynolds, please, this meeting is about the budget. We don't have time for personal grievances. No, we do have time, I countered, my tone unwavering. Because what's happening isn't just a personal grievance, it's a matter that affects us all. I glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of several sympathetic faces before gesturing at the footage on Lisa's camera. The installation of the solar panels on my property, a project I never consented to, was based on amended bylaws that were never properly approved by this community. Judith, you and your board took this land without due process. The atmosphere crackled with tension as I presented the evidence. Gasps erupted as I displayed the photographs, showing the destruction wrought by the bulldozers, and the emails revealing the shady deals behind Judith's power play. Judith's posture stiffened as she tried to regain control. This is preposterous. You can't just come in here and smear our project for your own agenda. But it is my agenda, I shot back, my voice rising with determination. It's about protecting my home, yes, but it's also about uniting against the injustice that you bring upon our community. Max stepped up alongside me, bolstering my resolve. Many of us have faced intimidation tactics from Judith's board. This is about more than just Jason's Island. The way this HOA is run affects us all. We deserve transparency and integrity. Whispers spread through the audience. I noticed a few neighbors nodding, some in agreement, others in hesitation. Judith glared at her supporters, her facade cracking under the pressure. Enough, she barked, the tension in the air palpable. You're just creating chaos where there should be unity. The community needs these updates. Maybe what this community needs is an honest re-evaluation of how we've been managed under your reign, Max countered boldly. You've pushed too far, Judith. It's time for accountability. Just then, I spotted an older gentleman, a former board member, rising slowly from the back. I have documents from my tenure, he said, his voice steady, even brave. Judith's amendments were never ratified properly. The finances were manipulated. A sense of electricity coursed through the room as murmurs turned to gasps of disbelief. Judith's previous confidence began to wane as the community members showed signs of anger and betrayal. This is an outrage. Judith fumed, but her voice was starting to shake. You're all being misled. The former board member, Mr. Harrison, shook his head. No more lies, Judith. You've taken too much from us. As tensions boiled over, I felt a small flicker of hope ignite within me. The community was waking up. Just then, I glanced toward the entrance, where I saw someone unfamiliar slip inside, a tall figure in a dark coat, watching silently from the shadows. My heart raced. Who were they, and what were they planning? I turned back to the meeting just as Judith, sensing the tide turning against her, snapped into action. I call for a vote to reassert my authority over this project. But before she could finish, the stranger stepped forward, drawing attention. Wait, he called, his voice cutting through the chaos. You've all been lied to. Judith's eyes widened in shock, and I could hardly believe it as the atmosphere shifted again. It wasn't over yet, something monumental was about to unfold. I watched as the stranger stepped into the light, his dark coat swirling like a storm cloud. The room fell silent, all eyes glued to him, including Judith's. You've all been lied to, he repeated, his voice steady yet urgent, trembling with the weight of something monumental. Who are you? Judith spat, her irritation barely masking her panic. I'm someone who knows the truth about what's been happening in Pinehurst Point, the stranger replied, his gaze unwavering as he scanned the crowd. I could feel the heartbeat of the room, each person hanging on every word. I have documents regarding the HOA's operations, evidence that Judith and the board have disregarded community rights and manipulated financial records for their benefit. A ripple of intrigue spread through the audience. What kind of documents? I pressed, my curiosity piqued. They are amendments, financial reports, and correspondence that show how Judith orchestrated the changes in the bylaws without a proper vote. She did it to ensure her projects benefited certain contractors while undermining other homeowners, he explained, pulling out a file from under his coat. Judith's face paled as he continued, I used to work for the HOA before Judith and her crew took over. I couldn't stand by while this corruption thrived, so I left and started collecting evidence. It's time you all knew the truth. Gasps erupted from the audience. I exchanged a glance with Max, both of us absorbing the weight of this revelation. So you're saying Judith has personally profited from this solar project? I asked, feeling a rush of adrenaline. The stranger nodded. And if you don't act now, she'll continue to take advantage of the community, putting profit over the interests of the homeowners. Judith, recovering her poise, stepped forward. This is ridiculous. You're just trying to stir up trouble. But her voice quivered, and I could see cracks forming in her armor. We have to show them the truth, I said, gesturing to the stranger. Let's see the documents. With a nod, he handed me the folder. I flipped it open, revealing shocking evidence, emails detailing kickbacks, signatures approving changes that never had the community's consent, and financial statements that indicated severe misappropriations. I held up the papers for everyone to see, feeling the surge of power in my hands. This isn't just about the solar panels, folks. This goes deep. This is about our rights, our community, and standing against the manipulation that's been happening right under our noses. The murmurs grew louder as residents began to exchange nervous glances. Judith's bravado faded in an instant. People were waking up, their acceptance of her authority crumbling. Let's take a vote," Max urged, his voice slicing through the tension. We can't let Judith keep running things without accountability. We can reform this HOA. Exactly. I agreed, feeling emboldened. We can propose new rules, transparent decision-making, required homeowner votes for major projects, and a commitment to serve all residents, not just a select few. Wait, hold on, Judith interrupted, scrambling for control. This is an emergency meeting. You can't call for a vote like that without proper procedure. But the crowd's energy had shifted. Once skeptical neighbors were now leaning forward, energized by the stranger's revelations and their growing outrage. "I'm all for a vote," shouted Mrs. Gonzalez from the back, her voice resolute. Others quickly chimed in with agreement. With momentum building, I glanced at the stranger. "We need your full support to expose what Judith and her cronies have done. Will you join us as a witness?" He nodded fiercely. Absolutely. It's time to take back your community." As Judith attempted to rally her loyalty base, calling for order, I knew this was our chance. Let's vote now," I bellowed, heart racing. "To reclaim our rights and ensure accountability within this HOA." The vote went forth, hands raised across the room. One by one, residents stood to cast their vote against Judith, many faces gripped with determination. The count unfolded quietly at first, then surged into an uproar as enough votes amassed to shift the tide against her. "Unbelievable!" Judith shouted, fury erupting on her face. "You can't do this!" But the community was no longer her pawn. I felt the overwhelming support surround me as the final counts were tallied. By a vote of 78%, I announced Max, his eyes gleaming, "You are officially removed from office, Judith Palmer." Gasps filled the room, and I could see Judith's expression transform from anger to sheer disbelief. Clarity washed over my body as I took in the moment, a collective victory rising like the sun on the horizon. But just as her facade crumbled, something unexpected happened. The stranger's expression shifted, a knowing smile creeping onto his face. "And that's not all." "What do you mean?" I asked, concern seeping into my excitement. He cleared his throat, pulling out another document from his folder. "There's more I found while digging into the records. Something substantial that could change everything." He unfolded the paper and held it high. This is a letter from the State Attorney General. They've been investigating Judith for misappropriation of community funds and conflict of interest with the solar project. It seems our meeting today wasn't the only one." The room fell silent as whispered shock spread among the residents, disbelief etched into their faces. Before anyone could process this new revelation, sirens echoed outside, growing louder as law enforcement vehicles pulled into the parking lot. Judith Palmer, the police chief announced as he entered the community center, "You are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and abuse of power. We have enough evidence to proceed with legal actions based on the findings that have surfaced this afternoon." Judith froze, her mouth agape as reality set in. "No. You can't. This is an illegal move." "It's too late," the chief said, handcuffing her and leading her away while the crowd erupted into a mix of cheers and disbelief. Today marks a new beginning," the stranger said, his voice rising above the uproar. This community will thrive under transparency, and truth shall prevail. You've all taken back control of your lives." As I looked around at the faces of my neighbors, I felt an overwhelming sense of victory. We had not only defeated tyranny in our community but had proven that together, we could stand against injustice. And just like that, a difficult chapter closed, giving way to a future filled with hope. Tomorrow, the sun would rise again, but it wouldn't just shine on the solar panels Judith had once dominated, it would illuminate a community reborn in strength. ****, the end. ****.